Pastor Tom Thibodeau.
Thank you. A particular thank you to Sarah. When I first saw her name on an email addressed to me, I just got excited. Why? She's one of the most memorable people I've ever had in class. She emanates joy.
Yes.
Now, here's what's so extraordinary from the poet Leon Bloyd. Joy is the infallible sign of God. How do you know you're in the presence of God? There's joy. And when I'm in your presence, I experience God's presence. Like being with all of you. Second observation in terms of being here this morning. How welcoming you are. I've never been to a place where so many people have come up and introduced themselves. No, really, I want to just tell you, as a speaker, you go to a lot of places and you're just like cheap jewelry. You come in and people go to the furthest place in the back of the room, like, I really don't want to be here, but entertain me. But as I came in, everybody outside, welcome to Good Shepherd. Welcome. The marvelous understanding of hospitality. Hospitality comes from the Greek word hospice, make space for the guest. Why is this so important today? Because we are guests in each other's lives. What's the opposite of hospitality? Hostility. So look at a number of people in our world today who are looking for hospitality. We welcome as the guest. Paul the Apostle reminds us, be aware you never know when you're entertaining angels. The understanding of when we gather, who do we meet? Third, I wrote a paper back when I was doing my doctorate in ministry on the theology of church basements. And here it is. If there's not much happening in a church basement, probably not much happening in a sanctuary. This is where people's lives are lived. This is where you've shared in terms of funeral lunches and important meetings, and you gather together in anniversaries and baptisms. This is where the community gathers. And then when we go into the church, we celebrate all of our lives there. So I'm always amazed when I come to a church basement. It's a place where there are loaves and fishes. You just started off, look at this, we could eat here for a week. And for the wonderful people who got here this morning at 6 o'clock to prepare, thank you. And even more importantly, how about those farmers? As I drove in today, a lot of corn still left in the fields. And people be at the fields late at night tonight trying to chop corn, get ready, so that we can eat and the world can eat. We are all dependent on the work and the service of other people. So it was really wonderful. So thank you. And finally, in terms of saints, I come from the Catholic tradition, and we have stained glass windows. And here's an understanding of saints. Saints are people who let the light shine through. So when you see the saints in the windows, that's what it was about. They let the light shine. And what do? You let your light shine. How important that is. My favorite commercial for many years has been this. Hello, my name's Thibodeau from Motel 6. And then Thibodeau goes on for 25 seconds, explaining all the reasons that's why you might want to stay in a new and improved Motel 6. But that last line's a dandy, isn't it? Remember, we'll keep the light on for you. Isn't that the role of the church? So many people walking in darkness today. And to be light, salt and leaven for the lives of other people is really extraordinary. So those are just kind of introductory remarks, but I'm here to remind you how good you are. I'm here to remind you how significant you are. I'm here to remind you that your lives are holy and sacred. I'm here to remind you that you're terrific. That's the good news. That's the good news. And why do we need to be reminded? Because we become forgetful, don't we? We live in a culture of deficiency in which you think, oh my goodness gracious, think about it for just a moment, how you are surrounded by goodness each and every day. Think of the people that you know and work with. Think of the people in your own families. This is the good news. When God created us, God said, we are very good. Made in the image and likeness of God. Very good. So I'm just going to remind you and reflect that back into your lives. I teach at a college, and right now, I want to tell you right now, I never criticize young people. Why? Who's your worst critic? Themselves. For those of us who are older, what's our responsibility? To reflect light back into the lives of the young. I'm just so sick and tired of people my age in their 70s walking around, oh, young people these days, oh, young. Have you heard that? I was back here in the 60s. We weren't so hot. Oh, young people these days, whoever was sent to Iraq and Afghanistan for 35 years. Oh, young people these days, when COVID hit, who took care of people in long-term care facilities? At Thibodeau University, 60% of our students are nursing students. They would go in and put on PPE, spend 16 hours taking care of people, and then go in at night, and there was somebody who, in their 80s, huddled in a fetal position, so lonely and afraid, and they tried not only to be a nurse, but a surrogate grandchild. Oh, young people these days, who shows up as clerks? What's the role of the church? The role of the church is to witness to our young what the good news looks like. I worked for 50 years in a church as a youth minister. And all the things I always tell the adults, our children are just a reflection of ourselves. Do they see the light? Do they see our faith demonstrated? Not by what we say, but how we live. This is what's really extraordinary. So I'm just going to continue to remind you how good and faithful, how kind and generous you all are. Because we become forgetful. Much like their couple in their 80s went to the doctor. The doctor said, well, for people in your 80s, you're in remarkably good shape. Anything I can do to help you? Well, we're having a hard time remembering things. Oh, it comes to age, get yourself a little notepad and a pen, just write things down. So the next night they're home watching a Brewers game, and the gentleman gets up and his wife said, where are you going? I said, get myself a dish of ice cream. Oh, she said, I want you to write it down. I don't need to be writing down a dish of ice cream for cry-eyed. I can remember a dish of ice cream. I like chocolate sauce. You know how I like, just write that down. I don't need to be writing down ice cream with chocolate sauce. I like maraschino cherries, just 2 maraschino, just write that down. I don't need to have to write down ice cream with chocolate sauce and maraschino cherries. Comes out 20 minutes later, gives her a plate of scrambled eggs. She looks at me, where's my toast? We're all like that. We forget. Oh, what, just, Jesus knew this. So when he sits down for the last time with his friends, what does he say? Every time you gather around the table, do this in memory of me. To remember. That's what saints are. You remember all the saints in your life. You remember the goodness. And that's our role. Help the world remember that God is in control. That Jesus has come. That we are saved. How important that is. So I'm just going to remind you continuously. And I'm here to serve your needs. What are your expectations? Why did you get up this morning and come here today? You had all kinds of leaves that need to be raised. Huh? Some of you are already blowing out the decoration for Thanksgiving. You know there's all kinds of things, but you came here today. What do you expect? What do you expect? The first responsibility of leadership is to find reality. The last responsibility of leadership is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. And while we're always going, we're serving the expectations of other people. When people come to Good Shepherd, what do they expect on Sunday? Don't we expect them when we come in and we have a place that we're welcome? The signs that you see, we take care of our children here. I walked in, and the first thing I saw were coffee pots. Made me feel welcome and at home. Come on in. It always seems, that very expectations. Think about this moment. You order a pizza, then they give you one with green olives. I wasn't expecting that. What do you do? Send it back. We're always there to meet the expectations of other people. I had a friend of mine who had high expectations for the man that his daughter was going to marry. All of us fathers who have daughters have high expectations. So he wanted a pre-wedding interview. So father-in-law with future son-in-law sat down. What kind of job you got? I don't have a job, but God will provide. I said, where you gonna live after you get married? Got a place to live? No, we don't have a place to live. God will provide. Do you have any savings? Things you come up with marriage? No, we don't have any savings. God will provide. I see. So he went downtown and had some coffee with his friends. How's that new son-in-law gonna be? Seems to be a fine fellow, but he thinks I'm God. I'm not God, you're not God, but what are we called to do each and every day? We're called to do God's work. God so loved the world. God so loved the world. God so loved the world. The world is God's enterprise. The world is God's enterprise. And God is sending us. God has called each of us. So, with that understanding, what are your expectations? What brought you this morning? What's going to make this next 3 hours valuable for you? I'm 72 and a half. I can see death from here. I'm not interested in what... No, when we gather people together, understand this. People's time is the most valuable asset. I always tell this, the agenda is always in the room. All of us are professionals. All of us have gone to meetings. You get those agendas 2 weeks ahead of time. Grammatically correct. There's all the Roman numerals. Everything's in place. And you look at that agenda and say, there's nothing there I want to talk about. But then when you do, you go to the meeting. And know what people do then when they go to the meeting? Now they bring their laptops. And then they put up their laptops. And they're playing solitaire. I don't know, just, and all of a sudden you're wasting people. Your time is your most valuable asset. We don't get this back. So whenever you're serving, what are the needs of other people? If servant leadership is to meet the legitimate needs of other people, how can I meet those needs if I don't ask people? I want to just tell you this. We give lip service to patient-centered care. And how many doctors really come in and ask their patients, what do you really need? Ask their families. Schools, student-centered care. Do we ever ask the families, what does your child need? How do they learn best? Do we ask our parishioners on a regular basis, what do you need? How am I to serve you? So the first responsibility of leadership, define reality. Last, say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. Talk with each other. What are you expecting? What's going to make this morning valuable for you? Audience participation. Just talk at your tables.
Can you verify? I can verify because I would have been pushing
and setting up for you, it's like this is the vision. It's a little bit of inspiration. Actually going more realistically. Sorry, inspiration. Emotionally being
But I think like getting that spark is a good topic for right now. I'm tired.
and also like sort of being savings. So I feel like a target job.
Oh, I can't see that. I want to do savings
All
Alright, if I might interrupt at this moment, could I hear from a few of you? What did you hear? What did you state? What did you hear? What do you expect? What's going to make this valuable for you?
Don't be shy. You're not shy people.
Please.
All right, so I think we're called to be light and mirrors, to reflect other people's light back. So I think we need to spark the light and clean up the mirrors a little bit.
Ooh, do I like that? Paul the Apostle. You don't want to find me God face to face. It'd be reflected back into our lives. Thank you. All right. What else? Please.
To meet others who are also in being service
I have a lot to say on this, and we have never been more connected and disconnected at the same time. And the real pandemic, what was exacerbated was loneliness. What we have in this whole culture, if you want to read an incredible book the book is called Together by our Surgeon General Bertie. And what he began to do is he had focus groups talking about to people across the country in terms of their health and well-being. And what do you think that people were going to talk about? He thought they'd be talking about diabetes, heart disease, cancers. He thought that people would be talking about obesity or lack of nutrition. And what do people talk about overwhelmingly? Loneliness. 1 in every 5 Americans go to the doctor who have a physical symptom. Loneliness. I would imagine within 2 miles of here there are high rises where people sit all day long waiting for one meal to be delivered, and they sit there by themselves all day long and eat by themselves. I worked at a church where we had to merge two churches, and you know how difficult that is. And the only way I know how to bring people together, two ways: one, prayer, and two, food. Those two things. So we put it together on a Monday night. We had praise and grace. We had a worship service, and then afterward I made a one-pot meal, and then I asked people to bring desserts. And it was just amazing the number of people who were widows, 9 by 13 pans of dessert. Well, why? Because when you're living by yourself, this is your favorite recipe, but you're not going to make yourself a 9 by 13 pan. But you want to share with other people. And so we had this one-pot meal, and it's just so fun to see people in their 60s and 70s all come in and taking dessert first. You know, they had 5 desserts. Can you just put your hand on the table, Ruth? And I had a woman come up to me and give me the greatest compliment I ever received working in the church. Oh, there's our cook. She didn't know my name. There's our cook. She said, thank you. Thank you. This is the one night of the month I don't have to eat by myself. Loneliness. And it's not just the elderly, the young. High school kids are spending 25% less time with their friends than they did 10 years ago. I spoke at a high school with 1,000 kids. I said, what would you rather have, a virtual friend or a real friend? In unison, a real friend. They're hungry for those kind of connections. We are. And I would like to mention this in terms of the mission of the church. We are the last institution in the society that provides the opportunity for intergenerational meeting. Where else in our culture do the very young and the very old come together? Do you realize how important this is? We are such an age-segregated society. And here, how do we gather with each other, to connect with each other, to build community? How important and significant that is. And so when I mentioned about the great gift of hospitality, how many people where do you feel welcome? Where do people kind of welcome you in? Hello, friend. Hello, fellow human being. This is very, very significant, and we'll come back to this over and over again. And this is what happens in terms of servant leadership. If I'm serving other people, what happens? I get involved in their lives. Here's a definition of servant leadership that many of you can put in your job descriptions Monday morning. Servant leadership is a privilege of being involved in the messiest parts of other people's lives. The privilege of being involved in the messiest parts of other people's lives. If you're in a leadership role, how do you know you're the leader? Because when things go wrong, people call you. Isn't it true? And when things are going well, what are people saying? They never call. When you're in the messiest parts of other people's lives. How important and significant that is. And so we build these communities where we can get to know each other in that way. All right? What else? Please.
Rediscover my why.
Sarah, why is it so important?
Discover your why?
Yeah.
Ooh. It all gets easier after that. It all gets easier.
Easier and complicated. So what's really extraordinary is this. The why is what you truly believe. And the Greek and the Latin word for belief, credo, from where we get the word creed. So whenever we say the creed, this is why you're a Christian. It's all right there. But it literally means what you set your heart on. What you set your heart on. And what's really amazing today, the greatest temptation of every leader is distraction, being pulled apart. Never getting a chance to reflect. Reflection is the opposite of reaction. Can we not agree that we've seen way too much reactionary behavior from our leaders? Way too little reflection? Interesting, even in the church, if you ask for silence in a worship, if the pastor stops and is just quiet, people think they've lost their place. You need time for reflection, time for quiet. I'll talk more about that, and that's where it is, so you can understand what is my heart set on, and how that begins to shift at different times in our life. All right? Anyone else? Please.
So I'm on the board, and a year ago we were privileged to have Sarah suggest a book for us to read on servant leadership. And at a board meeting, you have just a nanosecond to really jump into these things. So I wanted to go deeper into the topic.
Why at board meetings do you have a nanosecond?
That's that agenda.
Yeah, it is. We're all so task-oriented. Task-oriented in a whole organization that's dependent upon the Holy Spirit. Okay, Spirit, so we got a 2-minute prayer to just kind of fill our lives with peace. No, I want to just tell you this. The most important thing we do as a church is pray, and even the prayer has to be quick, because we have to get on the task. We are not human doings, we are human beings. And how is it that we immerse ourselves? What is it we're paying attention to? And so it's just rather extraordinary when you slow down and you pay attention. God will lead us. So thank you very much. So here's just a phrase I'll come back to over and over again, and you see it lived out in this community. Service is love made visible. Service is love made visible. I asked Sarah, I said, how long have you been here? 16 years, she said. She said, I came for 2 years, and I fell in love with these people. Oh.
We love you back.
We love you, of course you do. This is what the Christian community is based on. Service is love made visible. And all of our lives are predicated on the service of other people. So we're going to come back and we're going to spend an extended period of time on that. Thank you, sir. Now, when Jesus was they're going to have the big picnic for 5,000, remember that?
Yes.
Okay, what did they have to do before the 5,000 gathered? Where was Jesus? They had to go find him. No, read how many times in the gospel he was off by himself praying. How important this is. I love this line. Our God is not a workaholic, and therefore our God is not impressed by workaholism. How important that is. So what we're going to come back to that. Thank you. All right, what can you expect from me? 3 things. 1, I'm going to bring it. I'm 72 years of age. You see, he's limping around. You know, when I work with my students, they think I've just escaped from assisted living. A couple years ago, I was going to a prayer meeting, I fell on the ice and I tore my quadricep. Had to have my quadricep reattached to my knee. I got about 85% in my leg right now, so I'm kind of stiff-legged when I walk around. This is why I learned old guys and ice do not mix unless it's a gin and tonic. No. But I'm going to bring it. Bring positive energy. Why? Everywhere I go, people are exhausted. People are exhausted. Many of you got up at 6 o'clock this morning, did 2 hours of work, and then came here today. I mean, it's just rather amazing. And for those of you who are right now in the workplace, you're not working 40 hours at work. When's the last time you worked 40 hours? You're working at least 60 hours a week, and then how many hours you keep in contact electronically? Remember, Sunday used to be called a day of... Oh, how quaint. Oh, really? It's just rather amazing. Do you know that 59% of all Americans don't take vacation? 59% of all Americans don't take vacation. Don't raise your hand. I would imagine many of you have a hard time using all your PTO time. It's just rather extraordinary. I don't have to convince any of you to work any harder. Remember up north Wisconsin, we used to have those family little resorts, little cabins you might have went to, and you go up there for a week in the summertime, and you fish and you camp and you have fires and you play with the kids and you watch the sunset. They're going out of business. People are taking a week's vacation. Instead of going to a water park for a long weekend, shoot me and send me to hell. Okay, here it is. Here it is. If all the adults are exhausted, what are kids getting? And then we all say, oh, they're all on handheld devices. They're looking for an adult who will talk to them and listen to them and engage them, as well as other people that we engage with each and every day. How important and significant this is. How do you renew your energy? If you burn out, what happens to your family? If you burn out, what happens to your team? What happens to your board? If you burn out, what happens to your ministry? How important this is to renew ourselves, to be refreshed. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And how important it is. And everywhere you go, you find leaders. And if you burn out, what happens to that organization? Where happens to the creativity, the innovation? What has happened to the energy in the church? I had a pastor, my 5th pastor that I was on. He came in and told me his expectations. I said, well, thank you, Father. You want to hear my expectation for you? All right. Wasn't expecting that. 1, I expect you to be a person of prayer. I expect you each and every day to spend 1 to 2 hours a day in prayer. 2, I expect to take 1 or 2 days off a week. I expect to spend a week every year in retreat, and at least a week every year on a vacation away from here. I said, the last thing we need is 1 more grumpy priest. And looked at me. Well, it's true. But everywhere in terms of have leadership. Where do you have that kind of levels in terms of energy? And that's why we need to be encouraging younger people to step forward. We need their energy, their creativity. What is our role? Is to give them guidance and to help them understand. But you have to have the energy to get engaged. I talk to retired people. I never knew when I had time to work. What, we're just going to busy ourselves with so much activity? And think about it for just a moment, technology. They now call it dumb scrolling. And every group that I speak to, and I'll speak to you like this as well. Cell phones are useless. They keep you in contact with your loved ones when they need to get in touch with you. But how many of your emails are life-changing? We don't even read all of our emails any longer. We just scroll through them. Or any kind of levels in terms of social media. You just find yourself just kind of occupying your time. It's a continual distraction. And so people are exhausted because they're constantly being pulled apart. Here's a marvelous book that you might want to read, The Wandering Mind, What Medieval Monks Can Teach Us About Distraction. And what happened in the 3rd and 4th century? Desert fathers and desert mothers left their urban areas to go to the desert to get away from the distractions of Rome and Jerusalem and the major cities. And know what they found? When they got out in the desert, where was the distraction coming from? Within. People have always had to, so the idea of concentration, what Sarah asked us, to be here and to be present. Do you realize how important that is? Do you know the average attention span of the average American? 9 seconds. Average attention span, average goldfish, 12 seconds. I don't know who does the research, but I'm like, what does that say? It is so difficult to get people's attention because they don't have the energy. It takes energy to pay attention, to be fully present to the needs of other people. So how are we restoring and renewing our energy? How much time do you spend in quiet and solitude? Very important. Think about it for just a moment. Every medical center now has a sleep disorder clinic. What are the number one medications being prescribed? Depression and anxiety, people not being able to sleep. What's happened to us? How important it is to kind of come back and be in each other's presence, to pray, to pay attention, to be quiet, be still, and know that I am God. 2, second thing you experience for me is encouragement. I'm going to continue to encourage you. I'm going to look right in your eyes, Dean, and tell you how important you are, Knuckles. How important that is! Very important. Encouragement comes from 2 French words, encore. Means to have a full heart. So as you gather here this morning, how's your heart? Think about your work, think about your family, think about the things you're engaged in. Is your heart still in it? This morning, as you gather together, how many heartfelt conversations have you had? For those of us who are older, what are the things we know by heart that we need to be sharing with the next generation? This group, you can just feel it. It's warm-hearted, tender-hearted. You enjoy each other's company. It's evident. But have you not been in places that are cold, where people are cold-hearted or hard-hearted? And what have we seen on our TV sets? People have acted as if they're heartless in their interactions with other people. How important this is. It's a matter of the heart. But most important, as good as you all are, and in every group I work with, I say this, as good as you all are, I don't know who goes home this afternoon and takes care of somebody that has Alzheimer's. I don't know who in this group whose family's been touched by mental illness or addiction. I don't know who has a child or a grandchild on a spectrum. I don't know who's worried about their job and economic future. So why would I ever want to pile on? Why would I ever want to be destructive in my judgments of other people? The rabbis were asked a question. Rabbi, why do you tell us to put the word of God on our heart rather than in our heart? And the rabbi said, we tell you to put the word of God on your heart so that when your heart breaks, the word seeps in. And I would guarantee you that right now, we live and work in the community of the brokenhearted. We have still not been able to process all the grief that took place during COVID. You saw it here as well as I saw it on the cross. People would die and they say a celebration of life will be held later. It was never held. Understanding in terms of grief. I work with college age students. They were telling me that the first 2 years of college had to wear a mask. They didn't even know what their classmates looked like. I was thinking to myself, the original blind date. But all of a sudden they were realizing how much they missed. Again, kids will tell you they missed graduations or proms or things that they were looking forward to as markers. How many families could not get together because of what had taken place? Isn't it wonderful that we have an ability to wipe out a short-term memory? Because 3 years ago at this time we would not have gathered here in person. 3 years ago at this time you're thinking, well, I'll be eating Thanksgiving alone because I can't gather with our family. Isn't it extraordinary? The brokenhearted, none of us have been left untouched. So one of the interesting things about Robert Greenleaf, when he was founder of Servant Leadership, Vice President of AT&T Corporation in the 1960s, the largest corporation in the world, Vice President of Human Relations and Training, and he identifies healing as being one of the most core values of servant leadership. For a leader to be a healer. So I've noticed those congregations that are healing, people are joining. Because intuitively, all of us know at certain levels, we have levels of brokenness. How important and significant this is. And then finally, there's being high levels of engagement. I have you talking with each other in just a moment. Unfortunately, I've been talking too much. I think you realize that right now I could be my own filibuster. I could talk nonstop until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You know what you learn? Nothing. The longer I talk, the less you learn. Notice I don't use a PowerPoint. Have no power, have no point. No, I could have put you to sleep this morning, couldn't I? I could show you a PowerPoint and read it to you. I've never had a student walk out of a class and, ooh, I got that slide. Never seen so much good information in all my life. No. Look at the gifts that are here. Look how the Holy Spirit has blessed this community. Think of the talent that is here. It's just rather extraordinary. And so there'll be levels of engagement where you can talk with each other and learn from each other and recognize that together we provide salt, light, and leaven for the world and mirrors. Now, my real title, gave it to myself, Sarah.
Great.
I'm an ambassador for goodness.
I love it.
I figured the other team's got enough players on it. So wherever I go, this is what I do. I just remind good people how good they are. I don't have to remind people of their deficiencies. We all know about our deficiencies. What has the Gallup organization taught us? For decades, build on your strengths, manage your weaknesses. Build on your strengths, manage your weaknesses. And what did we understand in Jesus' interaction? Didn't he always see in something in someone that they didn't see for themselves? Whether they be a prostitute? What do you think that he saw in Peter that would indicate that any way he'd be a leader? Look at the people that he engaged with all the time. It's just rather extraordinary. What do we see in the lives of other people? Whatever you pay attention to, you get more of. Whatever you pay attention, you get more of. So pay attention to the good stuff. Wherever your attention goes, your energy flows and your focus grows. Wherever your attention goes, your energy flows and your focus grows. Pay attention to the good stuff. A couple of weeks ago, I was up and speaking in Duluth. On the way back, we stopped at Rice Lake at Norsky Nook. And I had a turkey sandwich. Oh, homemade turkey with gravy. Piece of apple caramel pie. Travis, that pie was so good I couldn't slice it. Have your tongue would smack your brains out trying to get at it. I mean, it was just lovely. And 5 feet away from me are 2 guys my age, just complaining about the world. I can tell from the way in which they're dressed. They're sitting at the Norsky Nook in the middle of the afternoon, just complaining about the world, just repeating everything they've watched in cable news. And I thought, what a waste. What a waste. You're sitting here and kids in schools need to be read to. You're sitting here complaining about the world and there's people at long-term care facilities that need somebody to visit. You're sitting here and your neighbor probably needs some help in their yard. You're sitting here and there's other people who could be helped at a food pantry and you're complaining about what's going on in the world. Of course the world is going to be miserable and small because that's what they're paying attention to. Look for the good stuff. I'm not Pollyannish. I can see what's taking place. But the only thing that changes any situation is when good people get together and do good work. Do you know of another way? And you don't need a large committee. Jesus knew this. That's when he said, where 2 or more are gathered in my name. He didn't say get a group of 12 and a co-chair. So the idea in terms of engagement and good people working together, this is what changes any level of community. And I'll go back to that in just a moment. And I'm never disappointed. Wherever I go, I'm meeting good people doing good work each and every day. March 24th, 2020, my life changed. March 24th, 2020, just like you, I was sheltering in place. I wasn't teaching, speaking, or consulting. I was at home with my wife, who's a retired kindergarten teacher. 30 years as a kindergarten teacher in across public schools. Now there's a job for you. You cannot name all of our state senators, nor can you name all the governors that we've had in the last 20 years. But everybody here knows the name of their kindergarten teacher. You know where you went to kindergarten, who your teacher was. Isn't that amazing? We go on the public, big men come up and they hug my wife. Mrs. T, do you remember me? You didn't have a beard when you were 5. We went out for her birthday, the server came up, Mrs. T, Brittany, and they hugged each other. And then my wife said, how's your mom? Thanks for asking. She's living with me now. 40 years ago, 35 years ago, when Brittany came to class at 5 years of age, her mother brought her. She was a single parent mom and then would volunteer in my wife's classroom when she had time. My wife never forgot her. 40 years, now her daughter's 40 years of age. See, we never forget the kindness and goodnesses that have been extended to us. They last. They last. So, my wife also counts votes at her township, and so she wanted to go and vote in the primary, and we had an appointment, so we were driving down the township, and as we pulled into the parking lot, she's speaking gibberish. I ask her my name, she doesn't know. I ask her to raise her right arm, she can't. I realize she's having a stroke. I pull our truck around and head for the nearest medical facility. Even at that time, there's barricades up. I have to pull around the barricades, get to the back door. 2 nurses come out with a wheelchair, help me get my wife out of the truck into the wheelchair, take her into emergency. I go and I park, I give them our insurance numbers, was given my first mask, and told to sit 40 feet away from everybody else. Now I'm scared. I'm praying. Will she live? Will she die? Will she be paralyzed? How does it affect our marriage, our children, our grandchildren? After 40 minutes, they bring me in. Everybody's got a mask on. My wife has an oxygen mask. She's slurring the words. She cannot speak. Everybody else is masked. And then they move in on television, and I find myself talking face-to-face to a neurosurgeon who's working from home. I can see his exercise bike over his right shoulder. And then he's reading all the test scores on his computer, and he's telling everybody there what they need to do to save her life. And then he looks at me and says, your wife has a blood clot in the brain that needs to be removed immediately. The surgery could entail death or permanent paralysis. Please sign. Now I'm scared. I'm by myself. And I sign the waiver. And I feel a hand on my shoulder. Just gives me a gentle squeeze. And I turn around and I look in the eyes of this nurse. Can't see his face, just his eyes. His name's Scott. Hello, brother. Hello, Phil Bean. Got your back. How many times have you done that in a lifetime? How many times have you rocked a child with ear infection at 2 o'clock in the morning, placing your hands and praying that that child would sleep? How many times have you held the hand of a friend who was very much afraid before surgery? How many times have you walked with somebody who was worried about their job? Hello, brother. Hello, sister. Got your back. And then I reached down and I placed my hand on my wife's head. We're both crying. This could be the last conversation that we have. And I begin to pray, asking for God's blessings on her surgeons and her nurses and herself, that she will be healed in this process. And the nurse on the other side of the bed just looks up and says, amen, brother, amen. 3 deliberate, sincere words. Amen, brother, amen. I do not know that nurse's name. I will never forget her words. Think about the number of times in which you've spoken a word of hope and encouragement into the life of another person and didn't even realize it. They come up next week and say, I really appreciate what you said to me. You're thinking to yourself, I wonder what I said. The power of the Word. And the Word was made flesh. And the Word was with God. Think of the poet David White says, one good word is bread for 1,000. Who needs to hear from you today? Who needs to hear a good word? Who needs an email or a text message? You say, I was thinking of you. I was praying for you. How are you? One good word is bread for 1,000. My wife was then taken off to surgery. I wait for 5 hours by myself. The surgeon finally comes out and says, we were able to remove the clot. Your wife is in intensive care. Later tonight she'll be brought to her room. But she cannot stay. It's COVID. I have to walk out. We didn't know anything. It was 2 days after the barricades had been put up. We didn't know. And then I drive home, call our 3 adult daughters, tell them what's happened to their mother. Later that night I called the nurse's station. She said there's 3 nurses who will look on your wife throughout the evening. I have to go back within a day to pick her up. Emergency neurosurgery, and they're not keeping people more than a day. I mean, think about it. We've forgotten all of that. And the toll that it took on our healthcare workers and families, it was extraordinary. Healing still needs to take place. So I go back within a day, and I pick up my wife, and I'm wheeling her out in a wheelchair. We get in the car, we're driving home, and I said, how are you? And she said, scared. Once you have 1 stroke, 40% chance you have a second. Still, that's why I didn't come last night. My wife doesn't like to be alone. I was with her when she had her stroke. We're all so fragile, are we not? And then she said, I'm awful tired. I had 3 nurses last night who woke me up every 20 minutes just to see how I was doing. Tom, 2 of the 3 nurses you taught had terrible. And the goodness that I tried to reflect into the lives of those young people was reflected back into the life of my wife. We become what we do. Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. So a habit, reap a character. So a character, reap a destiny. If we are good, kind, compassionate, thoughtful, generous, that comes back to us. Mean, bitter, cynical, that comes back to us as well. We reap what we sow. And what's the gospel talk about? It's the goodness of God. God's unconditional love. Where do we find hope? Where people of faith invest themselves in the lives of other people. Good people doing good work. You're terrific. You're terrific. Please stand. With the person right next to you, get yourself a partner. You might even want to venture out and find somebody that you don't really speak to on a regular basis and just talk with each other. What kind of person are you in your really good days? What kind of person are your days where you're not so hot? What kind of person are your really good days? What kind of person are your days where you're not so hot? Just talk with each other.
That's amazing. How much just like energy. So you kind of were at work, pretty similar. Those good days. I don't want to bed. I'll keep it going. Probably well into the night. You get tired. Keeps going really well in school. Short. Get to bed. Get to bed. It's too late. Mom want to talk. Trying to clean up. And all you really need is fire. And I know which one of you Yeah, awesome. We're Kid Club. Yeah. I love it. Most people say, All right, let me interrupt this moment. Just stay standing, please. Just stay standing.
What did you hear? What kind of people are we on our really good days?
And celebrate.
Hardworking, patient, joyful, creative, energetic, kind, thoughtful, friendly, funny, outgoing, loving, positive, flexible, ooh, resilient. Keep going. I mean, it's a good stuff. Joyful, patient, forgiving. On your really good days, you're saying to yourself, this is so good, I should be taking notes on me. Haven't you had days like that? Huh? Haven't you had days like that? And on days like this, people cannot go past you. They want to be in your presence. They want to get your attention. You stop at Quick Trip for cry eye. You get a cup of coffee and complete strangers come up and want to talk to you. Isn't that true, Travis? You just draw people to yourself. The word for that is called magnanimous. Say that with me, please. Magnanimous. I don't care if I'm repeated by Aquinas. It means to be great souled. Great soul. How important this is. Robert Greenleaf, founder of Servant Leadership, said this: all of us must be willing to live an extraordinary life in order to bring the quality of our lives to the world of work. To live an extraordinary life. Who got up this morning and says, well, I think I'll be a mediocre spouse? Yeah, I want to be a below average grandfather. I hope Sarah invited this really boring guy to waste our morning. No! We all want to be a great moment. Magnanimous. And we all have those moments, do we not? No, let me take it from here. What kind of people are it is where we're not so hot? I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm distracted. I'm complaining, I'm critical, I'm judgmental, I'm self-righteous of myself and others. I don't like people, I don't like myself. I hide myself behind a screen. I retreat to my own room. My world shrinks. I become small-minded. The word for that is called pusillanimous. Say that with me, please. Pusillanimous, puny-minded, puny-souled. Now here it is. Here's the truth about all of us. All of us have days where we're really great, and all of us have days where we're not so hot. Isn't that the truth? On some days I'm a saint, other days I'm a sinner. That's the truth. I do this with every group that I work with, and you can go home and do it with your families. And then go try tomorrow morning with a group of parishioners. What kind of people are really good days? What kind of people are not so hot? There was a high school football team in a rural community, standing next to a 15-year-old boy, and the coach is telling me his parents are going through a difficult divorce. I said, what'd you learn by doing this? And he looked at everybody. I'm your teammate. And whether you're having a good day or not so hot, it's my responsibility to love you. Whether you have a good day or not so hot, it's my responsibility to love you. Service is love made visible. Service is love made visible, and nobody got here by themselves. Nobody pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps. All of us got here because of the good work and the hard sacrifices of other people. In 1929, my grandmother was pregnant with her youngest child, my Uncle Ted. Her pregnancy was difficult. She had toxemia. She had made arrangements for her brother in New York State to adopt her son should something happen. She died in childbirth. In 1 week in 1929, my grandpa lost his wife and his infant son. He was raising beef on rocky soil in northern Wisconsin, and my grandmother knew he couldn't raise a child in beef. Then in the 1930s, what did our grandparents do? They stood in line for a pound of flour and a pound of sugar, ration stamps. And what was his reward after the end of the Great Depression? His oldest three sons were sent off to World War II, not to return until 1945. Do I have the life, the privilege, and the opportunity I have today without the service and sacrifice of that good man? What kind of work did your parents do? What kind of work did your grandparents do? And where is it? We even sing this. Faith of our mothers and fathers, holy faith, we will be true to you. We didn't. Faith wasn't something that was bestowed upon us. It was a gift that was given and nurtured in our lives. All we have is gift, and it's predicated on the service of other people. Like I told you when I was driving down today, in terms of our farmers, why did Putin attack Ukraine? Because they're the breadbasket of Europe, and if you want to control people, what do? You control their food source. Who stepped in? The American farmer. How important and significant it is. And how often we give thanks for our farmers. What percent of the American population works on the farm? 1%. What percent of the American population serves in the United States military? 1%. 2% of us feed and protect us each and every day. And how often we thank them for their service. Any of you right now have members of your family that are deployed? While we're sitting here today, 100,000 American troops in Europe protecting us, on the ships in the Mediterranean, serving. All those people today who are serving in the city of Madison, police, fire, EMTs, single parent moms, people who are working in hospice. All our lives are predicated in the service of other people. I was speaking at the National Auto Haulers Association before COVID. It's called National Auto Haulers. How do our cars get from the dealership to the lots? Auto haulers. About $100,000 worth, about $500,000 worth of inventory on those trucks. We've seen them. And all these guys were truck drivers before they became owners of these companies. And I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you, and they went out and got the hotel manager. And he brought out his whole staff, 72 people wearing black shirts and black pants. People from all over the world. It'd be the same thing if you went to the Kalahari today in Wisconsin Dells. People from all over the world who come to serve. And the auto haulers got up and cheered. And many of these people began to cry. Do you know that if you do good hard work on a regular basis, nobody recognizes it? It's more painful to be bullied and harassed. Because if you're bullying and harass me, at least you're paying attention. But how many of the people with service? And these are the people who had made our meals, bust our tables, washed our dishes. These are the people who have vacuumed the floors, cleaned our rooms, answered every question at the front desk, and made our drinks at the bar. And they realized they would not have had a conference was it not for those people who had served us. Service is love made visible. Now here's another thing we learned during the pandemic. All those people who are serving us were oftentimes invisible. And there's people in this room who have waiting tables or bus tables. You're people who have attended a bar or have worked in some kind of service organization and nobody even made eye contact with you. Haven't you experienced that? You're kind of invisible. And now we understand. Custodians, dietary in hospitals, people who are working in long-term care, truck drivers, clerks, forklift drivers. Now they're not invisible. What do we call them? Essential. Oh my goodness gracious. Paul the Apostle said we all have gifts. And every gift is significant to the body. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject in your verb grade to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. A heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And that's why we call it servant leadership. Everybody wants to talk about the leadership part of it. It's the servant part that's most important. If service is beneath you, leadership is beyond you. Here it is, very clear today. There's never been a time in which there's been more separation between servant leaders and self-serving leaders. Self-serving leaders, what do they want? Privilege, power, and prestige. Servant leaders, they're committed to the growth and development of other people, to their organizations. How important and significant this is. How important, significant, and important this is. Now, one last story, and then we'll take a break. It's as difficult and as simple as all this. So I'm teaching a class last Saturday, and one of my activities is I have people teach us what they love. It's just amazing. Plato said we reveal ourselves by play. You can really tell a person's character by their play. What do you do in terms of your leisure? Why is that so important? I don't have to convince anybody to work any harder. I do need to convince you to take more time for leisure. How important and significant that is. In terms of your children, what do your children want? Fancy vacation or time spent with you? We know that to be true. We just have to be reminded. So, here, one of the guys comes in. He's a deputy director of the State Patrol in Michigan. He drives 8 hours from Ann Arbor to our class. What does he teach us? How to roast organic coffee beans. He said, my wife developed an allergy to coffee, but I thought, well, maybe we try organic beans. So he buys his own organic beans and then taught us how he roasts them in a cast iron pan over a stove for 31 minutes. He said, I learned this on YouTube. I just taught myself. And he says, and then what happens, the house just builds up with smoke, and you have to wait to that point, and you bring them on the porch, and then the husks fall out, and they harvest it, takes the husks off, and he grinds the beans, and they have this most delicious coffee and he said, and the reason I go through all this is because I love my wife. See, when you think about it in terms of why you sacrifice, why do you service, provide services, love made visible. So the last presentation of the day is a college-age student. He's in his 5th year of eligibility after Thibodeau playing basketball, and he has a laptop, and his laptop is in a stick with a projector. I thought, well, how's this going to work now? So he says, well, listen, maybe you could look at my projector, and he puts it on a table, and we all stand around, 20 of us standing around a table like this, and he shows us these pictures of these most beautiful athletic shoes that are painted in these incredible details, and then he reaches out to his bag and pulls out a pair of shoes. He says, this is what I do. He stencils and paints shoes, and they're beautiful. His mother meets another mother online, and this mother has a 4-year-old son who's dying of a brain tumor. His little name is Bear. He's from Alabama, was named after Paul Bear Bryant. And little Bear had a brain tumor discovered when he was 6 months old. Now he's 4, and it's inoperable. And the mother said to the people on TikTok, if you could send Bear a little package, we'd really appreciate it. It's a highlight of his day. So his mother says to him, son, I think you should paint Bear a pair of shoes. So he paints a pair of shoes, and one half of the shoe is blue with Bear written on it. On the other end is Alabama, Roll Tide. Send the shoes, little boy. The mother makes a TikTok video, and she opens a package. Oh, Bear, look, here's a pair of shoes just for you. Look, it says Bear. Look, on the other side it says Roll Tide. And little boy kind of smiles, he cannot speak, and because he cannot speak, he just lifts his feet in the air, and his mother puts the shoes on. A month later, Bear dies. The mother sends a TikTok video, and the last picture, his sister is wearing his shoes at his funeral. Service is love made visible. This 22-year-old basketball player showed incredible love for a woman and her son that he had never met. Greater love than this, than to lay down your life for a friend. It's the gospel lived out in our classroom and in our workplace and in the community each and every day. Service is love made visible. And this is just who you are. I'm just reminding you how good you are, how significant you are. And every interaction is significant. Finally, I'll close with this. It's my new favorite book. I have one a week. David Brooks, How to Know a Person.
Yeah, that's good.
He writes this, and you've just experienced. In this age of creeping dehumanization, I've become obsessed with social skills. How to get better at treating people with consideration. How to get better at understanding the people right around us. I've come to believe that the quality of our lives and the health of our society depends to a large degree on how well we treat others in the minute interactions of daily life. And all these different skills rest on one foundational skill: the ability to understand what another person is going through. There is one skill that lies at the heart of any healthy person, family, school, community, church, or society, and that is the ability to see someone else deeply and make them feel seen, to accurately know another person, to let them feel valued, heard, and understood. That is at the heart of being a good person, the ultimate gift you can give to others and to yourself. And what did you just see in your conversations as you look into the eyes of each other? Did you not see the light of Christ? Did you not see grace personified? Good work, hard work, noble work, sacred work, our work. And you're all doing it so well. All right, 10 minutes, we'll come back at 25 after, 10 minutes. All right, as an observer to your community, I'm not a peeping Tom, I'm a listening Tom. So I listen to people's conversations and listen when, just go into a room and observe and just watch. What did I see? I saw some people hugging each other. I saw people talking with each other. I heard people laughing. You like each other. Why is this so important? Never trust a group that doesn't party. Really, if I ask you about your family, how do you celebrate birthdays? Well, we got one every year. How about anniversaries? Well, so what? What do you think about Thanksgiving? Well, it interferes with deer hunting. How about Christmas? Well, we just send gift cards. It's too much of a hassle. If you answer, what would you think about that organization? Wow, there's no life there. Well, it's the same thing in terms of the church. How do you celebrate? See, I talked about earlier on, joy is the infallible sign of God. When you're with good people, there's joy. This is how people laugh when there's tension in the room. Constipated joy. You know, how important it is to be in a place that's joyful. Now you're thinking, oh, this is so silly. Ointment, the word silly comes from the Anglo-Saxon word selig, which means blessed. But the number of people who have hard traveling right now, the number of people that are battling depression and anxiety, what's it like to come into a workplace? What's it like to come into a church where there's joy? I always ask people, what's it like to work with you? What's it like to spend 8 hours with you? What do people feel like once they leave? That is a question for your spiritual life. The importance, and when you're with good people, there's joy. Second, what happens when you're responding? Was anybody trying to be something they're not? There's no titles here. You're just authentic. Who doesn't want to have a place to go where they can be authentic? Young people, when they're looking for jobs right now, want to be a place where they can have their same person at work as they are at home. You want to be authentic. And finally, when you're with good people, you want to stay. You linger. How important this is. Now, when we're talking in terms of the workforce, what are young people looking for? One, a place where you're going to enjoy. Two, where you can be accepted for who you are, and you want to stay. In all of your workplaces, can you recruit and retain enough good people? I mean, this is really important. So, and the same with the church. If it's not joyful, if it's not good news, and I'm not saying that you're being Pollyannish, because what happens is this: you both embrace goodness, but you have to endure suffering. You don't get to choose. It's both and, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's at the heart of it. So how do we come to get this master's degree? I want to mention this. 1992, the president of the university came to me and said, would you like to begin a master's in pastoral ministry? I said, no. I said, a church has too many masters in pastoral ministry. We need a place where people can bring Sunday to Monday. We need a place where people in their workplace can bring their full selves, their deepest held values. I said, we need a master in servant leadership. He said, what's that? And so I tried to indicate and share books and articles, and it took 6 years. And then the sisters that I worked gave us a $50,000 grant to begin the program. And at that point, we had the only master's degree in servant leadership in the world. We still have the only master's degree in servant leadership in the country. Why? Because I believed then, and I believe even more strongly now. The gospel is to be like salt and leaven in the world. You look at the early church, engaged in the world. Oh, that's politics. What happens if we'd have people who are going to stand in the middle of politics as ethical leaders? The courage to stand up for what is good and right and true, and to work with other people. Treat people with dignity and respect. This is the role of the gospel. Not easy. Daniel Berrigan said, if you want to be a Christian, just ask yourself one question. Do I look good on wood? I mean, really, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice yourself for? I just got done with our servant leadership certificate online, and one of the people in the program was a federal DEA agent from Philadelphia. He said, the reason I got involved in wanted to get this certificate in servant leadership is because I wanted a place where I could express my faith. And it happened at a national meeting in Kansas City where the head of all the agents said, "Gentlemen, I pray for you every night, and I worry about you every day, because I love you." He said, "I never heard that in a workplace before. Greater love than this has no one to lay down their life for a friend." What are police officers in Madison prepared to do today? What are firefighters, EMTs? That's self-sacrifice. Greenleaf was asked the question, give us a definition of a good servant leader. He said, look at a good mother. Does a good mother give her child everything the child wants? Does a good mother take care of the child's needs? Does a good mother sacrifice for her child, much like that woman on TikTok with Little Bear? How important that is. It's salt, light, and leaven in the world. And then what we come back to the church for? To get rejuvenated. So that everywhere after our worship on Sunday, what's the commission? Get out there and change the world. Bring Sunday to Monday. Why is it that faith should be segregated from 9 to 10 on Sunday mornings? Shouldn't it permeate everything that we do? And I want to tell you this. It just shocked me. But the people who talk about Jesus Christ as being the greatest leader in the world are business people. Ken Blanchard, Kent Keith, Jim Hunter. Hunter was in church one day and paid attention to the gospel. And he just came to the conclusion that Jesus is the greatest leader of all time. If leadership is influence and impact the lives of other people, there's nobody in second place. He says, but if I talk about that, how many clients am I going to lose? But he said, if I don't talk about it, I'm lying to myself. What happened? He lost a few clients, but he gained many more. Because the levels just not taken. What do you believe in? What do you set your heart on? How important and significant this is. And then his wife brings him to a wedding, and he hears Paul's letter to the Corinthians. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not boastful. Love is humble. Love wants the good of the other. He thought to himself, this is servant leadership. But now I'm already talking about Jesus. What happens if I start talking about love? I won't have any clients at all. Only to find out that people are hungry. One good word is bread for 1,000. So this is our work, and since the year 2000, we've graduated over 300 people in every different profession of people who feel called. It's a vocation. Yes, today you were invited by Sarah, but you responded to the call. Vocation, vocare, to be called. Frederick Buechner, who just died this last year, was a great author and theologian. He said this, vocation is where your deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. Where your deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. Understanding what am I called to? Where is it that I find joy? How is it that I'm sharing that with others? All of us are called. And this is the great thing that's happened. This is the thing that's happened in the church. The laity, we forgot about our baptismal call. And what's our call? To build up the kingdom of God. Everywhere we're at. Isn't that amazing? And all of a sudden you begin to realize this is where hope resides. To be bold about who I am and what I do. St. Francis of Assisi, however, that said this, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words. It's how we live our lives. Now, Robert Greenleaf, the founder of servant leadership, was a Methodist who then later became a Quaker. But when explaining servant leadership, we look at his life. It's a narrative. All of our life stories teach great lessons, do they not? God speaks to us in what happens to us, so to forget what has happened to us is to forget how God has spoken to us. Well, this is how God spoke to Greenleaf. First, in his own family. His father, George, was a pipe fitter, a plumber, Terre Haute, Indiana. And he'd get called in, and he'd bring young Robert with him. And we'd come in, a pipe would have broke, and he'll walk around, and he's just kind of observing. And then he starts asking the people that were on duty, well, what did it smell like before the pipe burst? Could you feel a change in temperature? Did you hear any kind of different sounds? What was he doing in that moment? He was helping them to diagnose. Rather than coming in as a white knight and saying, I'll fix it all for you, what was he helping other people to do? Develop their own skills and abilities so they wouldn't have to call them the next time. What's the role of leadership? To create more leaders. The role of leadership is to create more leaders. We have way too many people that are passive. In fact, our greatest enemy today, indifference. I'll tell you 2 words that drive me crazy. Why don't they do something about it? You've heard this about the unsheltered people in Madison. Oh, why don't they do something? Who's they? I don't know about you. I follow somebody who says, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was a stranger, did you welcome me? Whatever you do to least my brothers and sisters, you do to me. He didn't say, what are they going to do about it? And then when good people gather, what are we going to do about it? So George was teaching the people how to become leaders. Robert Greenleaf, when he was 13, his uncle brought him to Lake Geneva, where he had a large telescope, and he had a chance to look at the universe. So what do we find in servant leadership? It is both very practical and very altruistic. And I think that's the same thing in terms of the gospel. The gospel is very practical and yet altruistic. The second thing that took place for Greenleaf in his life is that he was in the second semester of his senior year, and he had a very unremarkable college teacher, which gives me comfort. And he says, I think it would serve you and the country well if you take up residence in a large institution. He said the country is moving from small towns to larger cities, from small businesses to large institutions. Make sure that the large institutions serve the greatest good. I think this is really missionary territory, is work in a corporation and make sure that that corporation serves the good. I mean, it's tough, but that's what we're asked to do. Make sure that our institutions serve the good. Now, why is it so terribly important? Because we have never had a lower approval of our institutions than we have today. And yet, what happens to our institutions? Our institutions lay hands on the world. Give you an example. A year and a half ago, 13,000 Afghan refugees showed up at Fort McCoy in Sparta, Wisconsin, with a week's notice. Wow. They built a city in a week and took care of 13,000 people. It was extraordinary. Who else could have done that other than the United States military? I mean, you stop and think about the power of our institutions. And so what Greenleaf said, he wanted to work for a large company, so he got a job at AT&T, and he was digging post holes out in Ohio. Because he's working with construction guys, gentlemen, how do we treat young men on the job? You give them a hard time. Why? You're testing them. What happened to Greenleaf? His dad was a plumber. He passed the test. One of the interesting things that took place is that after about a month, their bookkeeper left, and he's only got the college education, so they made him the bookkeeper. And one day at payday, he paid out $40 too much. And he's sitting there, he's holding his head in his hands, and this big construction worker comes by and says, "What's wrong, kid?" He said, "I paid out too much money, I get fired." "You ain't getting fired. Get back to work and stop feeling sorry for yourself." At noon, this big construction worker comes, has 2 guys by the collar. "Give the kid the $20 back." He give him 2 guys $20 too much. Greenleaf later said this, "I never found the same level of loyalty in the boardroom that I found out there in the field." How many people will work together, doing good, hard work on the job? And he began to recognize that everybody's work is significant and important. Then what happens when he finds his book, E.B. White's book on language, and he begins to realize that words are a leader's most powerful tool. Words are the ways in which we influence other people. And he paid attention to the importance of language. We'll come back to that later. Then what happens when he's 40, he hears a radio commentary by Elmer Davis, who was kind of the Paul Harvey of his day. And he said it's up to people in their 60s to save the world. I believe that to be true. It's up to people in 60s and 70s to save the world. Why? Those of us that are 60s and 70s, we got time, we got energy, we got expertise, and we got resources. And when you ask people my age who should be saving the world, they say, well, 25-year-olds. Have you talked to a 25-year-old recently? No, their lives are tough. Elders. I mean, I mean, this is what's really extraordinary. I had a woman call me up and she says, Tom, I'm flunking retirement. I said, well, tell me about it. She says, I have time, I have energy, I have expertise. I was living in Madison. I was working for 30 years as an attorney for an association. Then my dad was in ill health, so I moved back to La Crosse to take care of my dad. My dad died. All my friends are in Madison, and I got this time and this energy. What should I do with it? So I'm gathering people together, elders, for energy circles. And we're going to start talking about what we can do with our energy to help our community. How important and significant this is. Here's an interesting contribution that I can make to you. Loneliness is a feeling I have nothing to offer. And how many people in later life, once you leave your workplace, feel, well, what do I have to offer? What are the gifts and the abilities of the elders? Think about Moses. What did God say? He says to God, this is too much work for me. God says, here, take 70 elders. It's for those of us who are older, what are we giving back to our communities? How important and significant this is. And then finally, he reads the book, The Journey to the East, of Leo, who's their servant, is packing their bags, setting the itinerary, making breakfast every morning as these pilgrims are going to the east. And one day they come down and Leo's gone. Nobody knows how to make breakfast. Nobody knows how to pack the bags. Nobody knows where they're going. Nobody knows any of the songs. And the whole thing falls apart. One of the guys continues on to the east, and he hears about this monastery where there's a very wise man. So he goes to this monastery. They have him sit in a great hall. And who comes walking out? Leo. And for the first time, Greenleaf understands, in order to be a leader, you must be willing to be the servant first. The servant first. And that's where his idea coalesces with servant leadership at AT&T. Well, and give you that opportunity to have those kind of conversations with each other. Your own narrative, your own story will crush you. Please stand. Might want to get a different partner, find somebody that you haven't talked with yet today. Broaden your circle of friends. And as we reconvene here, I just invite you to 30 seconds of silence, please. 30 seconds of silence. And in your conversations with your partner, your small group, and what was you became self-aware of within your own selves, what did you think, what did you feel, what did you observe? Thank you. Could I hear from a couple of you? What did you think? What did you feel? What did you observe in your conversations? Please.
Excitement for new avenues.
The ease that we were able to get to know each other deeply, I thought. The kindest eyes.
That's beautiful. The kindness eyes.
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
That someone, most everyone experienced someone calling them, calling them to servant leadership or calling them to bring them back in when they sort of lost their way.
A calling that helped us recenter. Thank you.
It ended with a hug.
Humility.
Say a little bit more about that.
Just people are very humble, like understating their contribution.
Humility comes from the Latin word humus, from which we get the word soil, or human. Remember the story of creation, born out of the soil. Now, what's really extraordinary is that a humble person is just grounded. Humble people don't think less of themselves, they just think of themselves less. It's grounded. Now, what's so extraordinary, this is the difficult thing about a virtue, it's learned not in moments of success, but in order to learn a little bit of humility, you have to experience humiliation. So with humble people, they've understood loss. And that's why they're so grounded, not thinking of themselves as being arrogant or better than, but equal to. Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Respect and affection developed in our group.
In a very short period of time. Well, here it is. This is the research of Dr. Uri Hassan from Princeton University, who is a neuroscientist. He's been asking people for the last 25 years, complete strangers, talk about what you have in common. And then he asked people if they'd agree to an MRI. And what you would find, after having spoken to somebody for 5 or 10 minutes about what you have in common, your electrical activity in your brain would be symmetrical. Same thing if you go for a walk with somebody within a block, what happens? You're walking in step with each other. Or like one of my students said, no wonder in the military they make us get up every morning and march. You wouldn't march 2 by 2 in the battle. Why do you do that? Well, get in step, get on the same page. What is Jesus constantly doing with the disciples? Walking and talking. And in that, what happens? A connection develops. Is that amazing? And then, like I said, in terms of a hug, that's safe enough in terms of that human connection, of desiring to be connected with each other. They've done this now in Germany. A psychologist very much worried, like in our own country, people's fear of migrants or immigrants. And of course, a number of Syrians who have come to Germany. So all of a sudden, you have a 55-year-old German gentleman with a 30-year-old Syrian mother who has 2 children. And here was the assignment. They sat in a room across the table from each other and looked into each other's eyes. What do you think develops in 4 minutes?
Smile.
Smiles, tears, that affection. That's why you're termed kind eyes. Hello, fellow human being. We were created for connection. And that's why loneliness is so painful. You know, where there's barriers. How important and significant it is. Then the level of affection and respect, it came from listening to each other. You gave each other your undivided attention. That's the greatest gift we give to another human being, is to be fully attentive. We know that to be true. And how important and significant that is. That I'm going to listen to you. Now, 3 things happen in terms of listening. First, listen has the same letters as the word silent. Sometimes it's difficult to listen, just to be silent. Research shows us we finish each other's sentences 85% of the time. Why? We think at the rate of 300 to 500 words a minute. We speak at the rate of 100 to 125 words a minute. So what are we oftentimes doing? Jumping in and finishing people's sentences. And while we're talking to each other, what are we doing? Not listening, but what? Thinking about what we're going to say in response. I have a friend of mine who's a speech pathologist, and she comes home at night and she talks about how difficult her day has been. Her husband's a high school principal. He jumps in and tells her what she should have done. And she says, Bob, at home, you're not the principal. How often do we want somebody just to listen to us? In terms of most conflicts in marriages, 85% of the time it's about 2 different subjects. Oh, that's what you're trying to say? Well, yes. If you don't only listen to me, isn't it amazing? Listen has the same letters as the word silent. It's also the foundation of prayer. Be silent. Let the Spirit speak. I have a sign on my door at my university. Silence is the language spoken here. Got that? That's written on the walls of Trappist monasteries. Silence is the language spoken here. Now, because I'm in higher education, I'm always interested in this. I've always thought of myself, by the way, as a street monk. And when I was in college, I was thinking about becoming a monk. Poverty, chastity, obedience, no problem. Silence, problem. Anyway, there's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and the name of the course is called Live Like a Monk. And he's teaching the students about history. There's the early monastic communities of the 3rd and 4th, 5th centuries. And then what happens, everybody who takes the class has to sign a contract that they're going to live like a monk for a month. No cell phones. Cannot spend more than $50 a week. Cannot multitask. And the last 2 weeks, you narrow it down to you use no more than 100 words a day. And you have to keep a journal every day about your own behavior, what you noticed. After 1 month, What do you think happens to students' academic achievement? What do you think happens to their mental health? What happens to their energy? If 15 people in the class, a waiting list of 400. We are so hungry for moments of silence, places that we can be with each other and just listen. Listen. My own father gave me wonderful advice for a leader. Tom, you never have to take back anything you listen to. How many times have all of us said too much and listened too little? Just to listen. Second, what happens if we really listen to each other? We're changed. We get another perspective of a person. How many times do you have a conflict with somebody and then you get to know their life story? Oh, now I understand. I had no idea you suffered that kind of trauma. And so often we set ourselves up in terms of being different from each other rather than what we have in common. Here's our great task today. Leadership is bringing people from different perspectives together for a greater good. Leaders just don't talk to people who like each other. You have to bring people together from different perspectives. I was speaking at another Lutheran church, and afterwards they wanted to talk about servant leadership. And this one guy started talking about how the teachers in the public schools are grooming kids. I said, how do you know that to be true? Well, I heard it. Do you know any students, any teachers who have done this? No. Do you know any students that have told you this is what they felt was happening? No. Well, well, I heard it. I said, I tell you what, growing up as a Catholic, I heard a lot of things about Lutherans too. Well, I guess don't think about it and just start growing up. We're laughing because we know that to be true. You know, I cried the day I found out that Eddie Matthews is a Protestant and wouldn't be going to heaven. You think I'm kidding? That was part of our own background, even go back, isn't it? That level of distrust that we had for each other. And how important it is, they got to come together through dialogue. Well, it's the same thing in our own country today. This is what's really disturbing for somebody who's older in this country, worried about his children, his grandchildren. If a Democrat talks to a Republican, they get punished. If a Republican talks to a Democrat, they get punished. What's the role of leadership? Just to talk to people that agree with you? Or the role of leadership is to bring people from different perspectives together for a greater good? This is our task. And oftentimes it means standing in the gap between two different groups. But we must be willing to engage in dialogue to overcome our differences. And finally, what happens is you feel it in your body. There's a visceral response when you hear someone else's story. Even our words have an impact on someone else. Is that not true? The way in which I speak to you has an effect on the chemical reaction within your brain. If I yell at you, where does all the blood flow go? To your fists or your feet, fight or flight. Or you feel a knot in the pit of your stomach. So the way in which you talk to and with each other. When I read the Gospels with my own religious imagination, 3 things about Jesus. Wonder what his voice sounded like. What did happen? People were moved by his words. 2, his eyes. And even looking into the faces of the portraits, people capture the face of Christ, the eyes. And finally, his hands. He was a worker. What did it feel like when he laid his hands on you? And all of a sudden you begin to recognize that those are 3 human capacities that we share in common with Jesus. Our voice, our eyes, our hands, to communicate love. You're involved in conversation. Conversation comes from 2 Latin words, con, versatio. Con means towards, but versatio means turn towards. So I had to stand up and turn towards each other. Conversation takes place. What's the opposite of conversation? Aversion. We turn away from each other. Who are the people that you need to talk to? And what really becomes significant is that we create our organizations, we create our institutions, we create our lives by the conversations that we have. The ways in which we talk to and with each other. Conversation also comes from the same root word as the word conversion. It's a turning towards the Lord. Now, what's really amazing is this. Just kind of put together some of these terms. How about evangelization? What's evangelization? How do you get people to turn to the Lord? By talking about the good stuff. Helping people to identify the good stuff in their life. Helping people to realize that they've been loved. Helping them to understand that I accept you. How important and significant this is. For people oftentimes who walk around with levels of shame, oceans of pain in their lives. I founded a Catholic worker house in La Crosse 27 years ago, Place of Grace. For 27 years, been feeding people from our food pantry, and once a week we have a community meal. I've been eating with some people from the streets for 27 years. This is kind of interesting. In all those 27 years, I've never gotten a Christmas card from anybody that I teach with. At the Place of Grace, people of the streets, always sent one for myself and my wife. Our one rule is to treat everybody as if they're Christ himself. How important that is. And here, at your wonderful parish, how well are people treated? How is a stranger welcomed in? How do we include people in conversations so they feel that their voice is heard? I had a chance to meet Ann Canton, who is the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Minnesota. Very incredible woman, has worked on international farm policy, has worked with human trafficking, he had even met Mother Teresa. Her brother was a president at ELCA about 20 years ago. And then one of her brothers was a bishop in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And so here's this very wise woman. And I said, Ann, do you have any words of hope? How do we provide a vision of hope for the next generation? And this is what she said. Make church basements a safe place to talk. She said during the Vietnam War, at our Lutheran church, we couldn't talk about the Vietnam War. We were sending off our sons, our brothers, our husbands to Vietnam, and we couldn't talk about it. It was so politically charged, and for those of us who were back in the 60s, we remember that. So we could talk about it at the Methodist church. In the Methodist church, after services, they'd have a big pot of coffee, and the community would gather, and that's where we would talk about our worries, our concerns, and our fears with each other. We need public spaces where people can talk about what's important. We shape our lives, we shape our communities, we shape our democracy by the conversations that we have. The ways in which we talk to and with each other. How important and significant that is. We reveal ourselves in conversation. Is that not true? When people start talking, you understand a lot about what they believe. I do not respect any man who criticizes or belittles his wife or children in public. They've just revealed to me their character. I don't care what position they have. But as another human being, they've just belied who they are. The people that they were entrusted to their care. That same thing for in terms of all of us. The power of our language. The power of our language. The power of the word. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, not the brightest crane in the box. You figured that out already. But you can write this down. This is important. I haven't said anything that really is important, but this is important. If you tell the truth, people will trust you. If they trust you, they will respect you. If they respect you, you'll come together. But if you don't tell the truth, then people won't trust you, and if they don't trust you, they'll never come together. How important and significant this is. Lucas, old school, this is how we used to do business. Now if I can't trust your handshake, I better get myself an attorney because we're going to court. Isn't the greatest comment I can give to another person is you're a man of your word? You give your word and keep it? The power of our language. Tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. It's the basis of our justice system. And what's justice? To be in right relationship with each other. Now here it is. The word truth comes from the Anglo-Saxon word troth, from which we get the understanding of betrothed. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. There's a relationship there. We are linked to each other. The power of the word is so significant. Technology is here. AI is going to be dominant in so many different ways. But there's nothing that replaces human language. Confucius, 2,500 years ago, said this: The rectification of a society begins with the reclamation of language. Isn't there too much that's rude and crude? How is it to lift up the language that speaks to the hearts and souls of people, and young people particularly? The power of our words. Some of us have never been back to a high school reunion because of what people said to us in our junior year. And when your parents die, you never forget the last words they spoke. Power of language. How about a little poem? A word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. Repeat after me. A word is dead.
A word is dead.
When it is said.
When it is said.
Some say.
Some say.
I say.
I say.
It just begins to live that day.
It just begins to live that day.
Power of your language. The power of our words. The ability that with one word I can honor somebody or I can humiliate them. With one word, I can lift somebody up or I can tear them down. The power of our language. I will tell you this. In all my years of working in the church, teaching at the university, I began all my classes with prayer. I've been working with high school kids preparing for confirmation for 40 years. I have never had a student say, I don't want to do that. Prayer is a school of love. This is for the brothers of Thibodeau. Prayer is a school of love. That woman on the other side of the hospital bed, amen, brother, amen. The power of our words. Holy words. Thoughtful, tender, remembered. Do you realize to be in a healthy relationship with another human being, you need 5 comments of appreciation, every one criticism? Do you get your 5 every day? Do you give your 5 every day? Anybody here dying of too much appreciation? Anybody here getting way too much affirmation? Oh, just stop with all that recognition, will ya? No! We all need it. We all need someone to pay attention to us. And how important this is. Think of all the people who serve us each and every day. Did we adequately thank all the people who got those bagels this morning and sliced them? Then Sarah brings out cream cheese. And then you got quiches, 3 different kinds, 3 trays. 2 different kinds of fruit, oranges and bananas. And then I noticed after I went through, cinnamon bread appeared. Holy smokes! You kept thinking of us, kept wanting to serve us. How important that is to feed us. Level of appreciation. One of the things that was most difficult when my father was dying is he stopped eating. And the hospice nurse had to tell us it's because now he's yearning for food for the journey. He doesn't need physical food any longer. He said, but it's been difficult because the way in which we show love for each other is to prepare food for them. Huh? We all grew up in families like that. My mom was just like your mom. Huh? A little quirky, but we just love her to death. And when I was traveling through Wisconsin Rapids, when after my dad had died, I stopped to visit my mom, and I never called ahead. It was so exciting that she was home, and she was so excited to see me, and I liked the excitement so much I never called ahead. Open the door. Mom! Tom! And we hug and kiss each other. And then my mom would say the same thing your mom would say. Are you hungry? And I said, no. So she made me a sandwich. And I said I was hungry. She made me a whole meal. Why? She couldn't help but feed us. Okay, what happens on the road to Emmaus? They're talking with Jesus. Weren't our hearts burning within us? He was sharing with them the word. And they didn't want at the end, so what did they say? Please come in and sit down with us. And he was a stranger, but how do they recognize him? In the breaking of the bread. The word company, and I would imagine all of you work for good companies. The word company comes from 2 Latin words, kumpanos, people that we break bread with. So what does it mean when I'm in good company, like with all of you? All of us have the expectation that we'll be fed, but all of us can feed others. So, getting back to evangelization. Here's the best definition of evangelization that I've ever heard. Where one hungry person tells another hungry person where they've been fed. So your task this afternoon and tomorrow and Monday when you meet a stranger, tell them how you've been fed at Good Shepherd. People will see the joy in your life and they'll ask you, what's that all about? I speak at conferences and people come up and kind of have to whisper, you're a believer, aren't you? Yes, I am. Where did the joy come from? It's in terms of the words. Now, in public, I'm not using religious language. I'm not talking about the eschatological realities. I always teach that to my students that when they go home on Thanksgiving, they can justify their tuition. Eschatological, oh, wow, that's good. No. What I am talking to people about, though, is in terms of how life is precious and how death is coming. Eschatological reality. Now what happens is this. Speak to the hearts of people. Speak to the hearts of people. Learn their stories. How important and significant this is. That's why so many people feel lonely, because nobody knows their story. Because nobody's asked. In his new book that's just arriving at Sarah's house when she gets home this afternoon. Already I've given you one page, and I'm going to give you another little piece, okay? Yeah, I know, you can't help it. So, in his chapter on life stories, he writes this. One day, about a decade ago, Nicholas Epley was commuting by train to his office at the University of Chicago. As a behavioral psychologist, he was well aware that social connection is the #1 source of happiness, success, good health, and much of the sweetness of life. Human beings are social animals who love to communicate with each other. Yet on this commuter train that day, he looked around and it hit him. Nobody was talking to anyone. It was just headphones and screens. And he wondered, why aren't these people doing the thing that makes them happiest? He later conducted some experiments in which he induced people to talk with other commuters during their rides downtown. And when the ride was over, they arrived at their destination. Researchers were there to ask them how much they enjoyed the trip. The comments were overwhelmingly positive. People, introverts as well as extroverts, reported that a commute spent talking with someone was much more fun than a commute spent locked into your screen. So why don't people talk more? Epley continued his research and came up with the answer to the mystery. We don't start conversations because we're bad at predicting how much we'll enjoy them. We underestimate how much others want to talk. We underestimate how much we're going to learn. We underestimate how quickly other people will want to go deep and personal. I would imagine some of you shared things that you might not even share with people in your own family, about the people that you admire or your own weaknesses or what's precious. As I hope I've made clear by now, people are eager, often desperate, to be seen, heard, and understood. And yet, we have built a culture and a set of manners in which that doesn't happen. The way you fix it is simple, easy, and fun. Ask people to tell you their stories. All of us want to be seen and heard. How terrible it is to be invisible, not recognized. I've been working with people who are living on the streets. My inconclusive research, about 95% of the people that are on shelter today grew up in foster care. And you'll constantly hear, well, why don't their families take care of them? They don't have a family. They don't have a place to belong. If you don't have a place to live here in Madison, what do? You line up at the same places at the same days of the week with the same people to get fed the same food. Nobody knows your birthday. Nobody knows your family history. And how often do we take time to get to know those stories? How important and significant this is. And what do we see in terms of Jesus? Always talking and welcoming the stranger. He engages in serious conversation with women, which was prohibited in the day. He talked about the Samaritan, who was a stranger. He engages in conversation with people who he knows wanted to kill him. The power of the word to transform other people. The power of appreciation in our lives. Don't believe me on this, just try it. Start writing thank you notes, and you'll get thank you notes for your thank you notes. No kidding. It's so rare that you get a 5x7 thank you note that you just kind of keep it. Isn't that true? I'm like you. Got one little emails, delete. Little 5x7 card, thanks. I'm keeping it. How we all are desperate for appreciation and gratitude in our lives. So you can't just talk about this stuff abstractly. Please put your feet flat on the floor. Please close your eyes. Pay attention to the mystery of our own breath, the breathing out and breathing in. And realize for the next few moments, all you need to do is be. As Sarah reminded us, we are not human doings, we are human beings. And at this moment, all we need to do is be. Please put a quiet smile on your face. Pay attention to your thoughts. Like a small puppy, they'll wander off. Like a small puppy, they'll come back. Enjoy your thoughts. Listen to all the sounds in this room. They were always here. So much is revealed in silence. Pay attention to the mystery of your own breath, the breathing out and breathing in. As you begin to relax, I would ask you to get a picture in your mind's eye of someone that you love. Someone whose love and support has been foundational in your life. Their strength is your strength. They have always been there for you. And the feeling is mutual. You care deeply for each other. Think of this person. Please be grateful. Think of a second person. This person's a rock. Parent, grandparent, spouse, longtime friend. They're always there. Got your back. No doubt. They always seem to show up at the moment when you need them most. Think of this person. Please be grateful. Please think of a third person who brings you joy. Just thinking about this person makes you smile. Their energy, their joyfulness. Sometimes you would call them silly and goofy. They have no idea how much they impact you. Their laughter is healing. Their presence is joyful. Think of this person. Please be grateful. Think of a fourth person whose humble service makes your life just a little bit easier. The person who delivers your mail, a neighbor, a clerk, a friend at work, someone whose humble service communicates respect and commitment. Think of this person. Please be grateful. And please think of all the people gathered in this space this morning. Brothers and sisters in Christ, each of us guests in each other's lives. Each of us with different and unique gifts of the Spirit, building up the body of Christ. Please think of each other. Please be grateful. Think how readily we're able to remember the people who love us and give us strength, the people who share joy and humble service. How easy it is to remember and to acknowledge the gifts of each other. Please be grateful. Pay attention to the mystery of your own breath, the breathing out and breathing in, and realize for the next few moments all you need to do is be. I will count backwards from 5, calling us all back to this room. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stretch, flex, and please be grateful. Please talk to each other. What was that like for you? What was that like for you? Just talk with each other.
Deep state of relaxation. His family got the caffeine jitters and sugar jitters and stuff. Relaxing. Oh, that eats like 4 people. I didn't know what. I got intentional. It's interesting. I was surprised that I picked the same person because I was not trying to English neighborhood in the distance. I find myself having
Let them know. Maybe give them a token. Even if you receive a card, even if I don't like this person, you're still opening it. You know? It's like that email you can receive. I mean, he's on.
All right, if I could interrupt, please, and hear from a few of you. Would you mind sharing what that was like for you? Anyone want to share what that little meditation was like for you?
When you were on number 3, like bringing the third person, I was on number 7. I just got to go in.
What's very extraordinary, Lucas, is that gratitude accelerates. The happiest people in the culture are the people that are most grateful. This has been the study for the last 25 years. It's all gift. And all of a sudden, you were just unleashed as all these people who have blessed your life. Thank you. Anyone else?
And a half answer that. It was, speaking of eyes, it was really moving to look into Sarah's eyes as she opened hers, because there was a lot of emotion there.
Aww.
That really moved her.
Yeah, the eyes are the mirror of the soul. To be in contact with each other. And what's really amazing, how much we can build community through silence. Now, you had the same experience with a loved one. You're sitting on the couch, neither of you say anything, and neither one of you want to say anything because you want to break the silence because it's so intimate.
Yeah.
Be still and know that I'm God. At the same time, I won't just answer this, that for some of you this is very difficult. Why? Right now you're going at breakneck speed. Very difficult to slow down and be silent. This takes discipline. Now, if you were to do this twice a day for 2 weeks, what we discover, and this is at the University of Wisconsin-Madison at the Center for Healthy Minds, which is probably doing some of the finest research in the country, in the world, in neuroscience. And after 2 weeks, what you'd find is that the electrical activity in your brain would increase. When so many people are talking about the levels of exhaustion, just by 10 minutes a day and meditating, being focused, you build up your levels of resilience. And then particularly by appreciation and remembering the people that you love, realizing that you're not alone. We had Captain Charlie Plum come and speak at the Thibodeau 2 weeks ago. Charlie was a Vietnam vet, Navy pilot, and on his last mission was shot down and captured by the North Vietnamese and spent 6 years at the Hanoi Hilton with John McCain in a 6x6 cell. And on stage, this is what he did. At 6x6 state for 6 years. 6 years. And he said, but the real prison was here. And so with a wire, they created a communication network where they talk to each other by shaking a wire and figuring out words, sharing their names and their birth dates, which one sailor memorized them all. Memorized all the names of all the prisoners of war at the Hanoi Hilton. After 3 years of captivity, they were asking for 2 prisoners to be released, and the commander in captivity told the sailor, "You're going." "No, sir, I want to stay here with all of you." "You're going." Because he had memorized all the names and addresses of where the soldiers were from. And he came back to this country, and he went back and visited every family to tell them what has happened to their soldier. Service is love made visible. Because he had deeply listened, he was able to be quiet and pay attention. How important and significant this is. Now, Thomas Friedman, in this marvelous book called Thank You for Being Late, I just love it. You know it's like coming to something late. "Oh, I'm sorry, the traffic. I wasn't able to get out of the house." And he just says, "Thank you for being late. You just gave me 15 minutes for reflection I wasn't going to have today." And he said, if I have some little time for reflection, I would imagine everyone else does as well. So that's why I'm just challenging you. How much time do you have every day for reflection? How much time do you have for prayer? How much time each and every day are you quiet? Easy to say, difficult to do. And then he writes this. All of us must learn to live in the eye of the hurricane. What's in the eye of the hurricane? Calm, still, quiet. And he says this. The eye of the hurricane moves along the storm. It draws energy from it while creating a sanctuary of stability inside. It is both dynamic and stable, and so must we be. We cannot escape all this disruption. We have to dive into them, take advantage of their energy and flows where possible, move with them, use them to learn faster, design smarter, collaborate deeper, all so we can build our own eyes to anchor and propel ourselves and our families confidently forward. And then he writes this. And he writes this for all of you at Good Shepherd. This is what you've done this morning. This is what the years of standing on the shoulders of the people who have gone before you. The closest analog for the eye of the hurricane I can think of is a healthy community. You are a healthy community. When people feel embedded in a community, they feel protected, respected, and connected, and that feeling is more important than ever, because when people feel protected, respected, and connected in a healthy community, it generates enormous trust. And when there's more trust in the room, people are much more likely to grow. They can be much more adaptable and open to all forms of pluralism. When people trust each other, they think long term. When there's trust in the room, people are more inclined to collaborate and experiment, to open themselves up to others, to new ideas and novel approaches, and to extending the golden rule. They also don't waste energy investigating your mistake. They feel free to fail and try again and fail again and try again. Collaboration moves at the speed of trust. I would ask you, friends, How many people you know would really appreciate being a part of a community where they feel protected, respected, and connected? That they can bring their whole selves on days in which they're really great and other days when they're not so hot, and still be accepted and loved, welcomed, and prayed for. Where else does this happen? Isn't it extraordinary? The gift of faith. So it just every time we have people trying to recruit for a job, a master's degree in servant leadership, people always ask, what kind of, some people say, well, am I going to get a better job because of, I don't know. Probably not. It's a path to downward mobility. No, really, an MBA is kind of climbing the ladder. What's the next step in my career? Servant leadership. You're called to serve. And who are you called to serve? Those who most need your service. So Greenleaf said this about servant leadership. Because of your service and leadership, are people healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants and leaders? And then here's the moral kicker. And what's the effect in the least privileged society? I've never been here before, but I guarantee you have an angel tree. I've never been here before, but I would imagine there can be special collections this month so that you can help pay for Thanksgiving dinner for people who do not have that same process. I've not been here before, but I guarantee that people in this room are donating hats and mittens and coats for children who might be cold without them. I've not been here before, but there are people in this room that are collecting money to make sure that people who are being ravaged by war are protected, respected, and connected. For the least of our brothers and sisters. And so I'll close with this. Bringing Sunday to Monday. Here's the beginning, or at least the best example of servant leadership. During supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and they had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, tied a towel around himself, poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel that he tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said, Lord, you're not going to wash my feet. Jesus answered, you do not know what I'm doing, but later you'll understand. Peter said to him, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus responded, unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said, Lord, not only my feet, but my hands and my head. Jesus said, one who has bathed does not need to wash except the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you. For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, not all of you are clean. And after he had washed their feet and put on his robe and returned to the table, he said to them, do you know what I have done? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that's what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also must wash one another's feet. For I have set an example, that you should do as I have done. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. You know these things, and you are blessed if you do them. Not blessed if you talk about them. Blessed if you do them. Living lives of service, dignity, and grace, which each of you has done for a lifetime. The people entrusted to your care, that you went out of your way and made sacrifices so that their lives would have dignity. Going to board meetings, which can be tedious, long, and yet necessary. Finding ways to reach out to people who are most vulnerable in your neighborhood, even the people right next to you that you have a difficulty with, you still extend Christian hospitality. This is the work of servant leadership. And it's not easy, because it demands us to live and work in this way every day. Downtown La Crosse was revitalized by a man by the name of Don Weber. Don Weber, when he was 18, graduated from Cashton High School, 30 miles outside of La Crosse, just barely got out of high school and joined the Marines. 49 Marines were sent to Vietnam. 3 came back alive after 18 months. He came back to La Crosse. He suffered from PTSD, having a hard time holding a job, was couch surfing, and would admit that he was drinking too much. Then he kind of pulled himself together and kind of built a little company in which they're kind of digging trenches and digging pipe. He was married, had 1 child, and then made a poor business decision and lost his business. He and his wife and his child, and his wife is pregnant with their 2nd child, are living in an abandoned chicken coop. He keeps praying. His mother's praying. He realizes that as a soldier, in no way he was prepared before he was deployed. And all of a sudden the country is going to war in Iraq. He worries about the soldiers. And he knows that they need medical and dental care before they go to battle. And so he begins a company, Logistics Health Incorporated. Starts talking to other people in the cross and say we have to do something for our veterans to prepare them for when they go and when they come back. Gets other people to believe in him. Was able to get a retired Tommy Thompson to help him with government contracts. Secures government contracts and very efficiently is able to take care of veterans. Built up a very successful company in downtown La Crosse. And when United Healthcare wanted to buy him out, they said, what do you want for golden parachute? And he said, I want 2,000 good paying jobs for young people to begin their families in La Crosse. The money that he's made, he's built apartment buildings in La Crosse. It's a free clinic that he's developed, as well as other businesses in downtown La Crosse. Downtown La Crosse is revitalized because of the good work of Don Weber. I know Don. His father was a World War II vet who was a prisoner of war. Came back after time in a German concentration camp, wasn't able to keep the farm. His dad was the janitor at the cathedral in downtown La Crosse for 47 years. Don Weber rebuilt downtown La Crosse to honor his father. Don Weber stands up in front of business people and he says, every place you stand is a chapel. Those of us who have been blessed with so much have a responsibility to the least of our brothers and sisters. The people that are unsheltered, live in the park, those are our brothers and sisters and they're my friends. And we all need to get to work to make sure that they are protected, respected, and connected. See all this servant leadership stuff is a washing of the feet every day wherever we are. Taking on humble roles of caring and sacrificing for the needs of other people. This is who you are. This is the work you do each and every day. This is the call of Jesus that all of you had accepted for you at baptism and continue to live out today. What a privilege to be with 50 people in Madison this morning, thinking, praying, talking with, and listening to each other in the Spirit of Christ.
God bless you.
This is gift. This is gift. A lot of people travel in darkness. We'll keep the light on for you. You take that seriously here. Let us pray. Oh, good and gracious and holy God, thank you for sending your Son Jesus to teach us and lead us in the way of service and love. Thank you for all the people you've sent into our lives, parents and grandparents, neighbors, community members, who through their service and love and sacrifice have made our lives possible. Thank you for the gifts that you've given us and we have been able to share with others. May we understand that we are a community serving you in your holy name, guided by your Holy Spirit. This gives us hope and joy and the opportunity to continue to serve, building your kingdom. And we are always reminded of this work Each time we pray the prayer that you taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory, forever and ever. Amen. I come from a terrible, not terrible university, but a terrible in the cross. That was founded by the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. One thing about the sisters, they pray nonstop and have been praying nonstop perpetual adoration for 147 years. They have a website, so that if you ever need prayer, just contact them on it. Who would have thought? And they put those prayers in their chapel, and the sisters pray around the clock. But they follow the example of St. Francis. And St. Francis in the 12th century, when there was war breaking out, the Crusades, he'd walk to the streets, and he would say to the people there, "Pace bene." So give me your right hand with a little bit of adjective. Can I have your right hand with a little bit of adjective? And just repeat after me. "Pace bene."
Pace bene.
Pace bene.
Pace bene.
It literally means peace and all good. And oftentimes I do this very playfully. Today I'm very cognizant. Is there anything more important that we could bring to every encounter with every person that we meet today than peace and all good? Until we meet again, friends, brothers and sisters, pace bene. Thank you very much.
I'm going to hand it with something that Tom taught me in classes one time, and it's sometimes you have to confront people with their own goodness. And so I'd like to confront you with your own goodness, Tom Thibodeau, and make you look at this lovely crowd that is standing because their hearts have been lifted. And we are lighter for your presence here. And we're going to send you with a book of blessings. You know I love blessings. These are ordinary ones. Thank you for pointing to the goodness of the extraordinary, ordinary blessings that bring light, salt, and leaven to our lives and our world. Welcome back all the time. And you all are welcome to go out and do those things that you're going to do. And join us tomorrow for All Saints Day. I imagine that quite a few names and faces have traveled through your head and heart today. So bring those stories, and we'll see you at 9, 10, or 6 tomorrow night. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Take some food. There you go.